All right, can everyone hear me? Good. Well, thank you all for coming to tonight's screening and artist talk. This is the first event in the upcoming exhibition Mnemonic Devices in Moreland Gallery, which will open next Monday, October 24th. We will also be having a virtual artist talk and performance by Michael Mandelberg on November 1st from 6 to 7 p.m. on Zoom. And then I will be giving a curator's talk in conjunction with Gallery Hop and the closing reception on November 18th, and that talk will be at 6 p.m. Tonight's speaker and featured artist is Joekenneth Museau. Joekenneth Museau is a Brooklyn-bred artist who seeks to connect with the world around him through dynamic storytelling. Museau's penchant for style and spoken word poetry initially commanded the attention of spectators, both in person and online. An undeniably unique talent, Joekenneth continues to rivet audiences with his vivid writing style and his charismatic, passion-filled delivery. Throughout his creative career, Joekenneth has sought to express himself in various media beyond writing. These include photography, creative consulting, and filmmaking. In the summer of 2013, Joekenneth self-published his first book, Tales of a Troubled Romantic, a compilation of poetry and prose writings. His second book, Days After Your Departure, released in 2017, is the author's most vulnerable work to date. Best described as a multimedia memoir, Days finds Joekenneth processing life after his mother's death. The book was later adapted as a short film with the same title, starring Joekenneth and directed by Sam Sneed, which we will be watching momentarily, followed by a talk from the artist. So please welcome Joekenneth Museau.
Well, thank you for being here this evening. First and foremost, I would like to thank you all for having me, Anthony, Emily, Elizabeth, and for you all being here this evening. This work means quite a great deal to me, and being able to share it with you all, future filmmakers, artists, change makers, means the world to me. Again, my name is Joekenneth Museau. I'm born and raised in Brooklyn. And so I'm a ways from home, but I've been loving it here, just the scenery, seeing the weather change, and it just feels like the right moment to share this work with you all. Days After Your Departure, I'm not gonna say much about it right now, as I have a presentation that will follow the film, but as Emily Elizabeth had mentioned, that it is a work that I made after or following my mother's death, and really processing my life thereafter. So it is the journey of my life, trying to really define my existence after losing my mother, and it touches on a lot of different elements of my life. It's a non-linear film, so you're definitely in for an experience that's going to take you in and out of different moments of my life, and I hope you enjoy it. So without further ado, this is a Days.
Well, Mom, I miss you very much. A lot has happened in my life, and at times I feel lost, so I'm learning to find my way. So, still feels heavy.
My mirror and I fight every morning and argue every night, but no one ever wins. We are both a bunch of losers.
Never felt more alive than a moment in which I held your withering hand, minutes before your blood trickled dry like the sediments of the sands of time settling at your fingertips. You exhausted your last bit of strength, petitioning your brittle bones to muster enough force to squeeze your final words to me.
You're going to be okay.
Your grip spoke every word with clarity, crystal clear by the way that you pinched the nerve between the valley of my thumb and index digital and froze.
Every fear of mine, allowing me to shed this childhood skin and stand before you a man without mother, an angel without wings, a mere mortal, now a vessel of divine remembrances shared among you and I. May God hold you better than I can keep you, cotton mouth, tucked in both cheeks, muffled voice box from the rivers flowing upstream to my tear ducts. What beauty in the silence of you rolling down the slope of my face, recalling moments immortalized by the moisture absorbed from the suction of my pores. I carry you. Cloud nine countenance, smiles from ear to ear wide, forever and evermore.
Let me get an Incredible Hulk. Let me get a Long Island iced tea. Let me get a Patron and cranberry. Let me get a vodka straight.
Like it. This dress, this is the cream dress joints. You know what I mean? The beige dress socks. Oh yeah, take a sip, get it right. Get it right.
We do this all the time. Why you don't gotta have them?
So you got to put it on display?
Vibe.
All right, brother.
Peace.
Always.
Yeah. Aye, yo, peace.
You son of a queen. You shine brighter than Con Edison. Your light, courtesy of the Elohim. Let me get a shoulder to cry on. Let me get a shower to cry in. Let me get a woman to hold. Give me a set of buckling knees to prostrate and pray to a God who won't utter a word to me, but will show me the way.
I know all about unraveling. I've dyed and mummified myself with the fabric of my flesh. I've challenged gravity. I've stood tall even when the ground told me that we belong together. I've spun, ballet beautiful, twirling, unwinded, unbounded, until I was free and whole with a rhythm that I never knew before.
Witam, ¿cómo es?
Muy bien.
Papa,
Bon.
y allez voir.
Bagan pilsel.
You compte faire manger?
Bagan pilsel.
It's a popular restaurant, City Island.
Yeah.
Un pile mon raconte.
Un pile moun.
Yeah. Ni boit côté glow.
Bodlo.
Yeah.
My mirror thanked me today. For the first time in years, we complimented each other on how good we look. And how my heart beats better when running on blessings. This is self-service. I'm gassed up on affirmations. My body isn't ready to be roadkill. We still have miles to go until my confidence no longer changes color underwater and I live a life that is golden. Until I truly believe my royalty. You're regal. You son of a queen. You shine brighter than Con Edison. Your light, courtesy of the Elohim. I am divine. Even with my gap and my windows cracked on the top half of my grill, I still fill hearts with feeling. I'm making emotions great again. I'm not even supposed to be here. I'm post-traumatic present healing. You are not a waste of breath. Your exhalations give plants another chance at life. Do not mistake this for conceit. Your self-esteem has worked graveyard shifts to witness its photosynthesis.
Kenny.
There will come a time when you'll chuckle and scoff at the words written on this page. You'll tongue kiss your teeth in Caribbean indignation and question your worth. Worth? Me not have that. Me not have that. When this happens, I need you to remember your smile, the softness of your spirit, the love in your eyes. I need you to live like tomorrow has an eviction notice, and that you have just enough time today to realize you are enough for today. And when I think that not even that would work, I would lean in closely to the mirror and whisper, I love you.
Thank you, thank you. Probably not what you were expecting on a Monday afternoon, but I want to give a bit more background to Days After Your Departure. It started off as a book that I wrote that took me 5 years' time from my mother's passing till 2017. So my mother passed away when I was in college. I was 22 years old, studying nursing. She was battling cancer for about 4 years, colorectal cancer. And I was her caregiver along with my aunt, who was her twin sister. So it was a lot to process. Language has always been my vehicle for processing. It's always been cathartic for me, poetry being that medium, but also just writing, journaling, ever since a child, seeing my parents go through domestic difficulties, which became, them getting divorced, and just me in high school as well, using words as a mode of self-therapy. So processing that took quite some time, just going through the motions. It really felt like something unraveled in my life because I had this conjoined existence with my mother. We were very close. So losing her was losing a piece of myself, and this film, but also the book, the memoir that I wrote, functioned as a way of me trying to find not only a way back to myself, but to explore and to discover a different part of myself, one in which I existed alone in this world, and wanted to really continue to write the story, the narrative, which is my own. As you saw in certain parts of the film, there were times where I didn't want to continue my story, and that was just a glimpse of some of that self-destructive behavior that I went through, which is part of, I guess, the grief and mourning process. It's really difficult to imagine or to even continue to live life with someone who's such an integral part of who you are and who you were becoming. So yeah, Days After Your Departure feels like a shameless plug. I did write the book. think it's 200 some odd pages of really that exploration of me trying to create this mosaic of my new life, really put the pieces together and to become whole. It's not offering any solutions, it's just a snapshot of the process and that unfolding over time. So the writing evolves, but also having these conversations with myself and writing letters to my mother that she may never read. But it's this dialogue that I had to compose in order to find that new me. So for me, I really wanted to go the length of this process, this journey. There's no algorithm, there's no roadmap to how you grieve someone or that mourning process. Yes, there's therapy, there's people you can talk to, but that vacancy that now exists in a person, and that person being me at the time, I didn't know how to fill that or how to cover over it in a way that was meaningful. The only way that I could do that is by just exploring it and taking it to the depths of the process. So writing the book was one thing. Then the second way that I wanted to explore was by doing an exhibit, an interactive exhibit. The first one that I had was in 2017, the same year in which I self-published the book, and it was completed. We staged it in my friend's studio space in Brooklyn. Thereafter, I did it in Brooklyn again. I went to the UK, did it at a friend's studio, and today, this is I think my fourth one, on Monday you'll be able to see it part of the Mnemonic Devices exhibit, again exploring how memory allowed me to not only put pieces together, but also really honor my own story by continuing on. There were memories and some associated nostalgia that I had with my mother, but I was very aware and conscious of the memories that I wanted to continue to make in my own life. And a part of that is understanding that you would have to lose some of those memories. They kind of patina over time, become a bit more faint, and because you're making and actively living your own life of making new memories, at times when I close my eyes, I can't picture what my mom used to look like, and that's just part of the process. This year, past May, made 10 years since she passed, and 5 years since I made this work. But what I wanted to do with the exhibit was not to create a room of just grief and just solemnness. Really, it was a way of paying homage to the fond memories I had with my mother. So there was a place, an area where there was a kitchen scene, a dining room table, and what you're not seeing in this image is a bed frame where I spent a lot of time with my mother by her bedside, but also sleeping in the same bed as her, up until the day she passed. But we had really intimate conversations at the table about life, which is rare for, I think, any child or young adult or adult in their 20s to have those conversations with their parents, to really have that sense of freedom, which was unique to me and my mother. And taking it a step further, to be a boy, a man, to have those conversations with his mother. And then a step further, to be a black man having those conversations with his mother because of the stereotypes and associations with masculinity. You're not supposed to be soft or free with your emotions. You're supposed to bottle them. You're supposed to be a man in the traditional sense of the words. And my mother is really the author behind the man that you see today, who's able to express himself freely, because she gave me the opportunity to do so. Those conversations we had at the kitchen table, or those impromptu dance sessions that we had in the kitchen. So it was a lot of moments that I wanted to remember and recall and keep close to me, because I knew those memories were fading and they were waning, and there was nothing that I could do to preserve them. My life would continue on, and there would just be new moments that would cover over what I had experienced previously. These are some just a few more images that speak to that exhibit, and we're going to try to recreate it and make it as interactive and live That's before. As you see in that second frame, closer to the to my left, were some handwritten letters that I wrote to my mother. This is after she passed, but that act of writing, connecting one part of the body to a piece of paper, just makes it feel real as opposed to typing. And I really felt like I was sending these like kind of dead letters to my mother, letters that she would never receive, but really allowing me to spend that time with her on paper. And we get to what we just saw, that short film, 9 minutes of really a visual expression of what was written. And that's days after your departure, the short film. A good friend of mine, Sam Sneed, approached me and said, we should make a film. Well, the reverse of that is I approached him and said, hey, I'm working on this book. I don't have any money. I'm working retail at the time. Can you make a trailer for me to promote my book on Kickstarter so we can raise some money to create this book? And he said, no, let's actually do a short film. I was like, I have no money. Like, I don't have a savings. You're talking about making a short film. He said, don't worry about it. He worked in commercial film, and he was really excited to experiment and step into the world of filmmaking as opposed to just creating commercials for brands like Nike, etc. He wanted to really dip his toes into storytelling, and he showed so much honor to my story, given that it was high sensitivity. And this is, I think, my mom passed in 2012. This was just 5 years after she passed. Things were still raw for me. But a part of this process, which I didn't mention before in the book, was this pilgrimage that I made to Haiti, where my mother is from, where my father's from as well, where my roots are. I never got a chance to go to Haiti when my mother was alive. And as maybe some of, if not all of you know in this audience, Haiti's had a very difficult time, from political strife to being the victims of natural disasters, whether it be earthquakes or hurricanes, and the lack of infrastructure, the politically charged invasions of countries really pillaging Haiti for their natural resources. It's just a difficult place to travel to. So I made that pilgrimage once in September of 2017, I believe, or 2014 rather, when I went out there with some family. I got a chance to be there for a short period of time. Then Sam said, we got to go to Haiti. In 2017, I said, we can't just go to Haiti. He says that we'll get a fixer, we'll make sure we go. 36 hours in Haiti. So what you see in the film, all those moments in Haiti, was 36 hours in Haiti getting things done. Even when we were there, we had difficulty getting back and forth from our hotel. As we were driving to the Marriott, there were protests, and people were coming to our car, yelling in the streets, burning tires. We spent a day in Joekenneth, which was 3 hours away from our hotel, and then had a great day of shooting, connecting with locals, just being able to see people who are part of my culture, where I come from, my origin, and that just felt great. But on our way back, as we arrived back from a day of shooting, people was like, you missed it. We saw burnt tires around. It was just like almost like a mini war zone. It's like, you guys missed all the drama that was going on. The next day we had to leave, and because things were still a bit unstable, we had to go through the back entrance. I don't want to paint this real solemn or just like crazy story around Haiti, because as you saw in the film, it's a beautiful island. And the people, as you saw, beautiful people with stories just like ours, or stories that just tell of the human experience. And it's that beauty we really wanted to tap into, to really change the narrative or give people another perspective on what Haiti is really like. It's a place like any other place where there's good and there's bad. But really seeing the people shows the resilience that they have, but the love that they have. And that's where I come from. That's what my mother really allowed to be a part of my experience. So some accolades that we were able to have by sharing the film. In 2018, it was shortlisted among thousands of entries as 5 films at the American Black Film Festival, which is sponsored by HBO. We didn't win at the film fest. I think that's because Sam was white, but anyway. We were a crowd favorite, and it was good to feel the love from people in the audience. And the film was exclusively licensed to HBO for 2 years, but now you can watch it on Vimeo, which we're happy that it can reach a global audience now. And just some behind the scenes from, well, not behind the scenes rather, some film stills from the film. I want to talk about this image on top. As I mentioned before, my mother battled cancer for 4 years, went through very difficult times, surgeries. Her initial diagnosis was stage 3 colon cancer. Went through a period of remission, and I didn't know much about cancer, although I was in nursing school at the time, but remission can feel like you've won the battle, like you've won the war even, like we've done it. The cancer's not there, but we know just given the pathology of cancer, it can just come back up, and it comes back 100 times stronger. So it eventually led to her demise, but prior to that, as I mentioned, myself and my aunt, which is my mom's twin sister, were her caretakers, and she spent some of her final days. She spent some of her final days in that room in my aunt's house. She spent, I think, like 4 days there, and then she had to go to the hospital and spent 48 hours in the hospital, where she eventually passed away. I got a chance to spend those final moments with my mother. There was a period where I was just like camping out at the hospital, and then took a break, went back home to Brooklyn, and then went straight to Sloan Kettering in the city again. And she was barely breathing, morphine drip, like end of life stuff. And I held her hand and I prayed with her. And I remember very clearly, this is a memory that I cannot erase. It's like she squeezed my hand for a bit, and then moments later would pass away. And I hold that dear to me because it really felt like she was waiting for me and allowed me to have that moment with her before she passed. But that room was it's very significant because I saw her begin to deteriorate, like lose her memory and things like that. That's when the cancer was metastasizing. So in order to like really bring out the emotion of that time, we filmed in there. And it was crazy, just even looking at it and filling the room with photos of her really meant a lot. But that room holds a lot of significance. And it just goes to show you, when we were making this film, nothing was haphazard. Sam pushed me a bit, and I pushed myself to re-engage with certain memories in order to kind of put them to rest, to revisit them, but also to know that, okay, this is the last time that I'm going to give this as much energy as I'm giving it, because my life has to continue on. And that was always in front of me. Even those moments where I had suicidal ideation, you do that because you feel like you're at your wit's end. But I knew in my heart that I wanted to continue to live because there was so much more. And you know, the cliche is, this is what my mother would have wanted, but it's very true. She would have wanted me to continue on. And I wanted that for myself as well. Yeah, I think this dichotomy of images, this duality speaks to itself, of just me not feeling like myself, feeling like on the brink of sanity, but also in reflective moments knowing that I'm gonna be okay. And this like mantra of you're gonna be okay, you're gonna be okay, like repeating it, like Bart Simpson's drawing on the chalkboard, you're gonna be okay. When my mom was told that the doctors couldn't do anything for her, I remember being in that office with her and like bawling, crying, and she looks at me, says, no, you have to be strong. You're gonna be okay. And that became the thing that played in my head. It's interesting, the person suffering doesn't suffer as much as the people witnessing the person suffering. And for her to have this like calmness, this spirit about her to anchor me is really one of the reasons why I'm standing here before you today. And I'm just very appreciative of that. And here are just some behind the scenes. As I mentioned before, the spirit of the people, the beauty of it all, the commentary on masculinity and how it's expressed. I've always been the soft one of my friends, the ones who would cry or who wants to talk about his emotions. My guy friend's like, hey, so what's on your mind? It's like, I'm not trying to talk about that, like relax. But through having that that way of communicating, which my mother instilled in me, I've been able to really be a resource to my friends and be a resource to myself. As I mentioned, my work is cathartic. It's helped me through so many difficult periods of my life. I'm going through a difficult period of my life right now, and again, the words are, and the process of writing is helping me to cope with it. And who knows, may materialize in another work, not as heavy as this in the same likeness, but similar to it. But thank you. That's all I have for today. And I would love to hear from you if you have any questions, but I really appreciate your time and attention. Oh, yes, go for it. Yeah. Just stand there. Back and forth.
All right, so thank you, Joekenneth, so much. I'm just going to bring this microphone around to any of you who may have questions so that you don't have to yell them across the room. Is there any questions out there in the audience?
About my favorite snack. Any questions at all?
I don't need a microphone.
All right.
So when you're writing your book, I obviously, like, putting everything together like that is going to bring a lot of emotions back up. What was, like, the most difficult part for you trying to put the book together?
That's a very good question. It's an extremely good question. I feel like the most difficult part for me putting the book together was trying to figure out what the arc was, what the story was going to be. Initially, I wanted to pay homage to my mother by telling her life story, how she came from Haiti, came from the States, etc. And then I realized that was not a place for me. I could not speak for my mother in terms of that story. I had to speak my own truth and how losing her affected me as a person. So just even the beginning, that the first thing you read in the book, that journey to departure, replaying her getting diagnosed, how I had to deal with that coming, graduating from high school. My mother was diagnosed with cancer in July. I graduated in June. So at what felt like a peak and this new era in my life, again, was met with something really difficult and heavy to deal with. So that first part of just replaying that story of her eventually passing away was the most difficult part to write. And there just, as my life went on, as the days went on after her departure, there were so many other things that were just unraveling, and picking up the pieces was a very difficult part of this story. A big part, which wasn't shown on the film, was me getting married 2 years after my mom passing, and me entering that relationship with heavy baggage and things that would go unresolved for years because my wife decided to marry someone who was a shell of himself. Really, I felt like a corpse entering this committed relationship to the point where it has had residual effects on our relationship even at this moment as we're currently separated. But I do believe just that initial process was very difficult because I had to encounter and look at those difficult truths head on.
Kind of as like a follow-up to that, in creating this, what did you want like your reader or viewer to, like what was the main takeaway you wanted them to pull away or want us to like pull away from these books?
Yeah. I just wanted to provide commentary of what grieving and mourning looks like in the modern day age. We share a lot. I'm on social media, and there's this filter of like, oh, I can create the narrative of what my life is. I'm having a good time with friends. We can literally put filters on our photos. We can create the narrative. With this book, I wasn't creating a narrative. I was retelling what was literally happening in my life. So I'm giving you the story raw, unabridged. I'm just putting words to it. So my biggest thing was just allowing my viewers, my audience, modern day peers to see that it's okay to be able to spend time with the difficult parts of your life and to reconcile those things, to confront them, The word confront and confrontation has a negative connotation, but for me, it's confrontation that leads to reconciliation. That was my biggest thing. So I just wanted to share something that people can see themselves in, or just give a voice to the voiceless in that way. I know a lot of people suffer in silence, and I was offering myself as someone who was willing to be vocal. And as I mentioned before, to be a man and to be a black man and do that, there was layers to that. And I wanted people to see that it's okay to talk about those things. You don't have to take it as far as making a book like I did or pushing it this far with your art, but I really wanted this to have some staying power, to be a compilation of someone who did something that felt almost impossible. It was a feat. It was an epic for me, but I was willing to take that road because I knew how it would benefit others. At a certain point, the book was no longer about me. I had hesitations of even releasing it, and I had a conversation with my wife at the time, and she said, you know, it's not about you anymore, and that resonated with me. Thank you. Any other questions?
What art did you lean on, or how did art work for you as you went through this process of book reading and then moving forward?
Yeah, so art is ever present in my life, whether it's the music that I'm listening to or the movies that I'm watching. Audio visual stimuli really is the crux of my inspiration. So in making the film, there is this album called, what is this album called? Anyways, by Samfa. I think it's called Processing or Process. He's an artist based out in the UK. And I didn't even realize this as I was listening to the album. It was afterwards, because sometimes things are so just like hidden in the lyrics. But that album was about him processing his mother's passing. And he did this beautiful short film, which served as definitely an inspiration for what Sam and I created, which really resonated with me. So visuals, music, those were ever present. So many of the great artists of our time and in past times have been able to vocalize the human experience through melody, through sound, and I think that's brilliant. It's one thing for me to do it with poetry, for people who create entire albums based on difficult times or transformative times in their life. It inspires me, so I just kept that around me. Even just going to art exhibits, just seeing different things. I wanted to be curious. I wanted to be a sponge and be an active participant in life, because I knew that would help me to do what I was trying to do. There were moments where I didn't understand what I was doing, but I knew I was doing it, and I wanted to keep doing it until it felt final.
Any other questions?
I have one. So the show is called Mnemonic Devices, right? And the idea of the show, at least for me coming into it, was kind of thinking about the things that cause us to remember and kind of help us to remember. How does it feel to think about the book now 5 years after the book, which was 5 years after your mother's passing, kind of reapproaching this work as a mnemonic device of a mnemonic device at some point?
It's like mnemonic device inception.
Yeah, a little bit.
I'm glad that I wrote it, because if I didn't pen down these stories, I probably wouldn't remember them with the clarity that I have. I get to reference things that I've experienced. So that as a means of remembering is great, and preserving memory. Memory is intangible. It's not like something that you can mold or create or really put a skin around it. It exists in our minds. It may exist in the eyes of people that we live life with, or a piece of clothing that we wear, but it doesn't have a shape. So in order to pen these memories down, for them to be memorialized, for the sake of using another word, is super important to me as a mnemonic device, but also understanding that memory works in a way that we make them in our daily life in every moment, and how we pay homage to that, how we honor the present by by being present and understanding that by being present, we are actually in the process of making memory is super important. So living with that sense of intentionality speaks to me a lot. So I'm glad 5 years later that I did something like this, because it not only serves as a record for me, but for those who may get to know me later on in my life. Like, I mean, I want to tell you this story. I may just hand this to you like, this is what happened 5 years from 2012 to 2017. I don't feel like talking about it, but you can read about it. You can spend some time with me there. There is this intimacy that comes with reading. That's why I enjoy reading, because it feels like you're having a conversation with the author, whether difficult, whether jovial, etc. But it really serves as this mnemonic device that I'm happy that I spent time with.
Any other questions?
Okay. Joey, yeah.
So I thought the film was amazing, and I thought it was an amazing representation of your words. And, you know, because it started with just words, and especially not in the typical format that a film is like written, what was that like when you're approached, like, hey, I want to make a film about this? I'm sure that was like maybe a little bit intimidating, or just what was it like to kind of have to relinquish a little bit of control, probably on both ends, the director as well, because, you know, in a typical film situation, the director is directing the story, but this is such an intimate story and such an intimate collection of memories. Like, what was that dialogue like between you all, and how did you approach that collaboration?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Working with good people is it's incomparable. Sam and I had a relationship as friends, as brothers, people who really respected one another. And as I mentioned, I was going to let him go on with this big idea that he had, because he had a sensitivity toward my story, the thing that I experienced. And it was difficult because I'm a poet. That's how I started. I started writing poetry at a very young age. Like, how do you make a poetry film without it feeling like a poetry film, where it's like, all right, I'm watching 10 minutes of like slam poetry. It can get mundane, it can feel repetitive. So how do you build a story around it? Sam is an incredible director and visual maker. I wish he was here to wax poetic about this process. But it was a push and pull in how he crafted and created the arc of a book that already had an arc. Was really taking you in and out of moments. Sometimes you're living with me and my words, sometimes it's a visual display that speaks or adds texture to what I'm saying. So you'll see that throughout the course of the film, that the words don't always dominate, sometimes it's the visuals. And it's really this play, this dance, so to speak, with crafting a film like that. And there's minimal dialogue, that interaction that I have with my aunt. As I mentioned before, my mom's twin sister, they don't look alike, but thankfully. But yeah, just finding moments in which we could make it feel immersive without it feeling like the words are just dominating and that you have to hear everything. I encourage you to pay attention to each and every word, because I spent so much time choosing them and curating the language around how I wanted to express myself. But it really comes about as a dance, and having that collaborative atmosphere was what made the film what it is.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions out there? I have one more.
All right.
We'll probably do the final. So you mentioned that when your mother was going through chemo, that you were in school for nursing. I also know that now you're a creative director. That's a pretty significant change of career path. How did that go about? How did that happen?
Yeah, good. A little less heavier question, right? I was in nursing school because I wanted a 3-day work week, and I knew I would be able to make good money doing that. And I did have an affinity, a fondness toward just the study of medicine. Like, anatomy, physiology was one of my favorite classes in high school. And the idea of being of service to people makes me feel good. It feels good to do good. I think we all can agree about that. So I was like, all right, this is something I can try out. And there's a demand for male nurses. There's all these things going. I'm like, I'm doing what I need to do. This is a great career path. But in my heart and the thing that feels native to me, innate even, is just words and using words as a vehicle of expressing myself. It's always been something that has been a part of me. I remember being like 5 or 6 years old and just like begging my mom, like, I want to learn how to read. I want to learn how to read. There was something that I observed even at that age. It's crazy that I can remember it. But the adults were able to read things and they were able to have conversations and communicate. And I felt like I was missing out. Like, wait, I want to have conversations with adults. I want to know what these words on this paper mean, because I felt like I was missing out on having a full life experience. And that's crazy to say that a 5-year-old is thinking so philosophically, like I should just be playing with toys, right? But words had that effect on me, and as my parents, and even before my parents were going through a divorce, growing up in an era where the golden era of hip hop and being immersed in that world, being born and raised in Brooklyn, listening to artists like Jay-Z, DMX, Nas, if you remove the filter, or if you remove rather the storytelling around drugs, misogyny, violence, etc., what I heard rather, I say saw because the language is so visual, but what I heard in that music was stories about men who went through fairly difficult times. Again, a layered experience, being, growing up in poverty, systemic racism, all of the things. And these stories, they were so far from my experience, but I was fascinated by it because they were using language as a vehicle to tell their stories. This is my long-winded way of saying words have always been a part of me. So to now be in a role at an agency where it's full service creative from web to branding, etc., and to be able to use my penchant for storytelling as a way of telling, of helping brands, of enhancing their experience. This feels like I'm doing what I was supposed to be doing all along. And it's just, I consider it a privilege to do that, not only in my professional career, but also as the artist Joekenneth, to continue to push storytelling forward, because it's the language of my heart.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for
Thank
sharing
you.
that language with us,
Yeah.
both here and in the exhibition. It opens October 24th. Joekenneth, thank you for being here with us tonight.
Thank you all again. I really appreciate it.